there, it's Ingrid. Today I have a great project. I love holly leaves and I love Christmas trees, so this really combines two of my favorites, and I love these leaves in this collection. This is from the new Candy Cane Lane Stamp of Approval collection. So to get started, we're going to take a piece of 140-pound watercolor paper because we're going to be doing a little bit of watercolor stamping. And I have a T ruler, and I'm basically drawing little tiny dots here in the corner. And part of it went off camera, so sorry about that, I deleted that. But I have two little dots about 1/4 of an inch on each side there on the bottom. And I'm going to connect them with the very, very light line that I'm drawing with an HB pencil. And then at the top, I'm going to measure the center and create a dot also about 1/4 of an inch in, and that's going to be the top of my Christmas tree. And then I'm going to connect that center dot to the other two ends of my tree at the bottom, and that will give me a really light, just kind of a boundary for when I'm doing my watercolor stamping. Now the reason you want to go with a really light touch is we are going to erase this at some point, and if you do it really hard, you just don't want to have any of that. You don't want to have the impression of the pencil in the watercolor paper. So there you can see the shape there once the camera zooms in. Now that we have our outline, we're going to fill it in using the holly stamps. First off, we're going to start off with the smallest one to the left, and we're going to use a mini mister as well. And unfortunately, a lot of times when I'm spritzing the stamp, it happens off camera, so I apologize for that. But we're going to use peeled paint distress stain, as it's a really wet ink, so that works really well. I don't need to spritz my stamp as much. You can also use dye-based ink and just give it an extra spritz just to kind of get that ink kind of flowing. So I just spritzed it off camera, and then you'll see I'll hold it down. You want to give it a chance to actually transfer to the paper. You want to stamp it, put a fair amount of pressure down, and we're using the smallest one for the very top of the tree, and then we're going to kind of build our tree. Now to start, I kind of came up with a pattern on a piece of scrap paper first, and that I was kind of working off that, and that way I kind of knew where to go and just kind of played around with it, moving my larger and my smaller holly leaf stamps in multiple directions. And here you can see it up close, what it looks like when you lift it back up. And it has a really nice kind of organic look to it. I really love this kind of look. The watercolor stamping is a very simple technique. You can all do it with whatever dye-based inks you have. And now I'm just going to speed it up so that you can just get a quick glimpse as to how I put the tree together. As you're starting to put your leaves down, you just want to be aware too to just leave a little bit of space in between. You don't want to deliberately leave too much space, but don't worry if you have awkward white spaces that don't look like the tree's really filled up, because that's where you can put your triple and your double berries. So there's always a place to kind of put stuff. And if you really are not feeling it, you can definitely stamp the entire thing out on scrap paper ahead of time and just kind of work the pattern out yourself. You also want to make sure that you're flipping your holly leaves around and having them come from different directions, whether it's up, down, left, right. Just kind of make sure that it's not all looking too uniform. You want to have it, again, the watercolor in itself, I use the word organic a lot, gives it that kind of a feel. It's very natural, it flows. You also want to be aware as you're starting to come further down towards the bottom of where the bottom corners are, because you're going to have to kind of figure it out so that your tree kind of goes across the bottom. You don't want to overdo it on one side and then have it short on the other. And the closer you get to the bottom, you're really going to need to kind of figure out how to fit everything in. But again, you also want to be aware, you don't want to have everything going the same direction. It's really important to keep it kind of flowing. And it really kind of has that really nice watercolor feel. This really looks like a painting. And then once we've finished our tree, we're going to fill it in with the berries. And you can also use some berries on the very bottom, as you'll see in my example as well. Now that we have our tree all stamped out, we're going to use some distress inks. Now there's two really great Christmas inks. There's Candied Apple on the left and Barn Door. We're going to use Barn Door today. We're going to use the triple and the double hollyberry stamp, and these are from the Merry and Bright Bough stamp set. also by Catherine Pooler Designs. Love the stamp set, and these holly berries are the perfect ones. Love them. But they're great for this project. They're small and they're very detailed at the same time. You're going to start with your triple berry and just kind of fill in the larger spots, and then you're going to come back in with the double and kind of balance out your project. You want to make sure to have enough red in there without overtaking it, and at the same time you don't want to have it all concentrated in one area. You really want to spread it around the tree. These were done exactly like the holly leaves. They're first inked up and then very lightly spritzed with a mini mister. So I'm going to jump ahead here. You want to kind of really look at your project and get a feel for if it's missing anything anywhere. I'm going to add those last couple little berries, and I've got some here at the very, very bottom, and it's a great way to kind of round out your tree by adding a few there at the bottom. And look at that. Doesn't this tree look great? I love it. It really looks like a watercolor. It has detail, but yet it also has a lot of imperfection. Now that we have our tree completed, it's time to get rid of those really light pencil lines that we had possibly left behind. So I'm taking a white eraser to just very lightly remove those. I'm going to flip my piece over onto my cardstock, and this is just really for a guide. I'm just positioning it onto where I need it to be. Definitely use your D-static tool. Put your watercolor piece there, and then we're going to add our greeting. I'm going to use Versamark ink, and I'm going to emboss a few of the sentiments from the Merry and Bright Boughs stamp set. This is a great sentiment. There's lots of different things that you can switch out here. It's a really fun little stamp set. So once I have that down, I'm going to emboss those in gold. And then once I have them heat set and they've cooled off a little tiny bit, I'm going to add a couple of the holly berries, also from the Merry and Bright Bough set. There's 3 different little holly berry configurations there. And you can see they have the smaller one to the inside and the larger one to the outside. And I just did those in pewter just to have a little bit of a different contrast there. We're going to get rid of all that D-static that's left behind. You want to make sure that your embossing's fully cooled. And then we're going to glue our tree back down. But before we do that, we're going to add a little bit of embellishment around it. The card kind of needed something, and I didn't want to add sequins. So I'm going to take out my T ruler and just make sure that I have a nice 1/8 of an inch border. I'm just going to add some long lines and a few little dots in between, just to kind of give it just a little bit more, just kind of complete it. And that was really all the card needed. It didn't need a whole lot. I don't want to take away from the watercolor. Doesn't that just look great? I love those little berries mixed in with the holly leaves, and the watercolor look is it's just really artsy and nice and elegant. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you've had a lot of fun with this video. Definitely check out all the details on the blog, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, be sure to do so. And over on my blog, I have another Creative Tips e-letter that you can subscribe to, and that way you will be sure to get our 12 Days of Christmas series, which you will not find anywhere except in your inbox. So hopefully I will see you there as well. See you next time. Bye-bye.